Nari stood alone in the blue glow of her private chamber aboard the massive Naviran diplomatic vessel. Her slender blue fingers moved across the holographic display, stopping when she found the encrypted files. The silver markings along her arms pulsed with anxiety as she opened them. "No," she whispered, her large almond-shaped eyes widening. The files contained undeniable evidence. Her bondmate Taiho had been meeting secretly with representatives of the Vespian Empire for months. The Vespians, known throughout the galaxy as conquerors who stripped planets of resources and left them barren, had been trying to gain access to Naviran space for decades. Taiho had given them navigation codes to bypass defense systems. In exchange, they promised him power when they established control. Nari copied the files to a secure crystal and tucked it into the hidden pocket of her formal robe. She needed to confront him before taking this to the council. She found Taiho in their shared quarters, preparing for the diplomatic reception that evening. His tall, lean figure was draped in the traditional silver and blue robes of a high diplomat. The geometric patterns on his skin, marks of his high birth, seemed to shimmer with pride. "You look troubled," he said without turning around. "I know what you've done," Nari said quietly. "I found the communications with the Vespian commander." Taiho turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "And what do you plan to do with this information?" "Take it to the council, of course. This is treason, Taiho. You've betrayed not just me, but our entire people." A cold smile spread across his face. "Always so righteous, Nari. So predictable." He stepped closer. "Do you know why the Vespians have conquered half the galaxy while we hide behind our diplomacy? They understand power. They understand destruction," Nari countered. "We've built peace across 12 systems. Peace that will end when the Vespians arrive. Better to negotiate terms than face extinction." Nari backed toward the door. "I'm taking this to the council now." "They won't believe you," Taiho said calmly. "They already think you're the traitor." Nari froze. "What?" "I reported your suspicious activities 2 days ago. The evidence against you is quite compelling. Meetings with Vespian agents, unauthorized access to defense codes, it's all there." "But that was you. I did none of those things." Taiho shrugged. "The council has already seen the evidence. My evidence. Who do you think they'll believe? The daughter of merchants or me? Born to the highest house in our system?" Nari ran from their quarters, heart pounding. She needed to reach the council before it was too late. But as she entered the main corridor, 4 security officers blocked her path. "Diplomat Nari, you are ordered to surrender yourself for questioning," said the lead officer, his tone formal but eyes sympathetic. "Please, I must speak with the council. There's been a terrible mistake. The council is in emergency session because of your actions. You will come with us now." Guards escorted her to a holding chamber where she waited for hours. When finally brought before the council, she found them grim-faced and already decided. Elder, son, head of the council and once her mentor, couldn't meet her eyes. "The evidence against you is overwhelming, Nari. We have communications, access logs, witness statements." "It was Taiho. He framed me. Check my private files. I have proof of his meetings with the Vespians." "We did check," said Counselor Min. "Your files were empty, and Diplomat Taiho provided evidence that you attempted to implicate him to cover your actions." Nari saw Taiho standing to the side, his expression one of perfect sorrow. He had planned everything perfectly. "The traditional punishment for treason is death," Elder Sun announced. "But in light of your previous service, the council sentences you to exile. You will be transported to Outpost 17 at the edge of our territory. Outpost 17, the farthest, most isolated station in Naviran space, a place where problems were sent to be forgotten." 2 days later, Nari stood at the viewport of the small transport vessel. Her possessions had been reduced to a single bag. Her diplomatic rank, her achievements, her life, all gone. As the ship pulled away from the main vessel, she caught a glimpse through a distant viewport, Taiho standing with a tall figure in Vespian military dress. They weren't even hiding their alliance now. The transport captain approached. "We'll reach Outpost 17 in 3 days. It's not so bad. There. Quiet. Nari didn't respond. She knew the truth. Outpost 17 wasn't her final destination. It was merely where Taiho and his Vespian allies planned to eliminate her permanently. She had 3 days to plan her escape. Nari watched from her small window as the transport ship approached Outpost 17. The station was even more desolate than she had imagined, a collection of metallic structures clinging to a barren asteroid. Only 20 Navarans staffed this remote outpost, monitoring the empty border of their territory. 3 days in transit had given her little time to plan. The captain had taken her communication devices, leaving her isolated. But Nari had managed to hide a small tool in her boot during the hurried departure. Not much, but perhaps enough. "Prepare for docking," announced the automated system. The ship shuddered as it connected to the station's airlock. The transport captain, a gruff older Navaran named Do, gestured toward the exit. "Your new home awaits. Station Commander G will assign your duties." Nari stepped onto the station and immediately sensed something wrong. The docking bay was empty. No greeting party, no security officers. Outpost protocol required at least 2 officers to meet incoming vessels. "Where is everyone?" she asked. Do frowned, his hand moving to his side weapon. "Stay here." But before he could investigate, the station's alarm system blared to life. Red, emergency lights flashed throughout the docking bay. "Warning. Hostile vessels approaching. Warning." The view screen on the wall activated automatically, showing 5 Vespian fighter ships emerging from lightspeed directly in front of the station. Their distinctive red hulls glowed ominously against the darkness of space. "We need to evacuate," Do shouted, grabbing Nari's arm. "Back to the ship." But as they turned, the docking bay doors sealed shut with a heavy thud. The transport ship was trapped. Nari's mind raced. This was no coincidence. Taiho had planned her arrival and the attack perfectly. The station staff had either been eliminated already or would be killed in the coming assault. The first explosion rocked the station, throwing them both against the wall. The lights flickered. "Emergency pods," Nari said, pulling herself up. "Level 3 has them." Do nodded grimly. "The transport ship's engines need 10 minutes to restart. We won't have 10 minutes. They ran through corridors filled with flashing lights and the distant sound of explosions. When they reached level 3, they found 2 station officers lying dead near the command console. "They've breached the station," Do said, checking the officers' wounds. "Vespian energy weapons." Another explosion, closer this time. The station shuddered violently. "Structural integrity compromised," announced the automated system. "Station collapse imminent. Evacuation recommended." Nari moved to the emergency pod bay controls. 4 small escape pods remained, designed for individual evacuation. She began the launch sequence. "You should go too," she told Do Dar, the captain. Shook his head. "My duty is to my ship. I'll try to undock and escape. The Vespians will target any ship leaving the station. Then I'll give them a proper fight." Do handed her his personal weapon. "You were set up, weren't you?" This was all planned. Before Nari could answer, the station rocked with another explosion. A section of the ceiling collapsed, narrowly missing them. "Go!" Do shouted, pushing her toward an open pod. Nari climbed in, the small craft barely large enough for her frame. As the pod door sealed, she caught a final glimpse of Do running back toward the docking bay. The launch sequence completed. Her pod shot away from the dying station, its automatic systems activating to put distance between her and the attack. Through the small viewport, Nari watched as the Vespian ships continued their assault. The transport ship never emerged. Her momentary relief vanished as warning lights flashed inside the pod. A Vespian fighter had spotted her and was giving chase. The pod had no weapons, limited shields, and minimal evasive capabilities. A blast grazed the pod, sending it spinning. Damage reports flashed across the control panel. "Navigation compromised," the system announced. "Course correction required." Nari desperately tried to stabilize the pod, but another hit damaged the propulsion system. The pod tumbled out of control, moving faster as it was caught in the gravitational pull of a nearby planet. The Vespian ship fired again, but the shot went wide as the pod's erratic movements made targeting difficult. Then, seemingly satisfied that the pod would be destroyed in atmospheric entry, the Vespian fighter turned back toward the station. Nari struggled with the controls as the pod began to heat up. The small blue-green planet filled her viewport, beautiful, unknown, and now her only hope for survival. Uncharted planet, the system informed her. Warning, atmospheric entry imminent. Brace for impact. The pod shook violently as it entered the atmosphere, flames surrounding the exterior shield. Nari secured herself as best she could, knowing the landing systems were damaged. She caught glimpses of vast oceans, green land masses, white clouds. The pod's remaining systems tried to slow its descent, but it was falling too fast. The last thing Nari saw was a dense forest rushing up to meet her. Then came the impact and darkness. Pain greeted Nari as she drifted back to consciousness. Every part of her body hurt. She tried to open her eyes, but one was swollen shut. With her good eye, she saw unfamiliar surroundings, wooden walls, simple furniture, sunlight streaming through a window. This was not her escape pod. She attempted to sit up, but a sharp pain in her side forced her back down. She was lying on some kind of soft platform covered with fabric. Her wounds had been wrapped in white material. The door opened, and Nari froze. A being entered, clearly not Navaran, but walking on two legs like her people. Its skin was a light brown color without any of the markings her kind had. Dark hair covered the top of its head. The being noticed she was awake and smiled, showing white teeth. It approached slowly, hands raised in what seemed to be a peaceful gesture. "You're finally awake," it said in a deep voice. "That's good. I was worried." Nari couldn't understand the words, but the tone seemed gentle. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. The being seemed to understand. It moved to a table, poured clear liquid into a container, and brought it to her. It helped her sit up slightly, supporting her back with surprising gentleness. Nari hesitated before accepting the drink. The liquid was just water, cool and refreshing. She drank greedily. Slowly, the being said, pulling the container back slightly. "Not too fast. 3 days passed this way." The being, who she now understood was called June and was a human male, tended to her wounds with remarkable skill. He seemed to be some kind of healer. He brought her food and water and helped her move when necessary, always respectful of her pain and space. On the 4th day, June brought a small device to her. It was a mix of parts from her escape pod and what looked like primitive local technology. "I found this in your ship," he said, pointing to a small blue component. "I think it helps you understand language. I tried to fix it." He attached the device near her ear. At first there was only static, then slowly his words began to make sense. "Understand me now? I hope this works. My name is June." "I understand," Nari said, her voice weak from disuse. "I am Nari." Joy spread across June's face. "Nari," he repeated. "Good to finally meet you properly." Over the next week, as Nari's strength returned, they began to talk more. She learned that June lived alone in this forest by choice. He had been a doctor in something called the Army, but now preferred solitude. He had found her pod crashed in the forest and pulled her from the wreckage before it caught fire. "Your technology is amazing," he told her as he changed the bandage on her arm. "I've never seen anything like it. Are there others like you?" Cautiously, Nari explained about the Navaran people and their place in the galaxy. She told him about other species, interstellar travel, and the diplomatic relations between worlds. She was careful not to share technology that might be dangerous for a developing world. "So your people don't know about aliens," she said. "About life beyond your world." June shook his head. "There are theories, stories. Some believe, most don't." He looked at her with curiosity rather than fear. "I always thought we weren't alone." "Most species react with fear when they first encounter others," Nari observed. "You didn't." June smiled. "I was a doctor in war zones. I've seen enough to know that appearance doesn't determine character." He paused. "Besides, if you wanted to harm me, you've had plenty of chances." 2 weeks after her crash, Nari could walk around June's cabin. He had salvaged what he could from her pod before local authorities discovered it. They had taken the remains, but June had hidden the most important components. They think it was an experimental aircraft, he explained. They're looking for the pilot, you, but they won't search this far into the forest. We're safe here. One evening, as they sat by the fire June had built, Nari found herself studying him. Humans were physically similar to Navarans in basic structure, though their skin lacked the bioluminescent markings her people had. What fascinated her most was their emotional expressiveness. Every feeling showed on their faces, in their voices: joy, concern, curiosity. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have left me in the pod, or turned me over to your authorities." June was quiet for a moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "Where I served as a doctor, I saw how quick people are to fear what's different. That fear leads to hatred, to violence." He looked up at her. "I decided long ago to choose compassion over fear." Nari felt something unfamiliar stir within her. On her world, relationships were practical arrangements, partnerships formed for mutual benefit. What she felt growing between herself and this human was something different, something her people rarely experienced but humans seemed to value greatly. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want to try to fix my distress beacon, to see if any friendly ships might be near this system." June nodded, but Nari noticed a flicker of something in his expression. Was it sadness? "Of course," he said. "This isn't your home. You must want to return to your people." Nari didn't correct him, but as she looked around the simple cabin that had become her sanctuary, she wasn't certain anymore what home meant. Nari woke with a start, her silver markings glowing bright blue in the darkness of June's cabin. Something was wrong. She felt it before she heard it, a faint vibration that humans couldn't detect but that every Navaran recognized. The sound of Vespian engines. She hurried to the window. The night sky was clear, stars shining brightly over the forest. Then she saw it. A small red light moving against the stars, descending slowly. "June," she whispered urgently, shaking his shoulder. "Wake up." He sat up immediately, fully alert. In the weeks she had stayed with him, she had noticed how quickly he could transition from sleep to wakefulness, a skill he said came from his time as a military doctor. "What's wrong?" "They've found me. Vespian hunters." Her voice trembled slightly. "They're landing nearby." June moved to the window and looked out, though Nari knew he couldn't see the ship from this distance in the darkness. "How many?" he asked. "Already gathering supplies. A small ship, probably 3 or 4 hunters." Nari watched him move efficiently around the cabin. "They can track my biological signature. We can't hide here." June nodded, stuffing medical supplies into a backpack. "The mountains. There are caves there with natural mineral deposits that might interfere with their scanners." He handed her warmer clothing. "Put these on. Nights are cold in the highlands." Within 10 minutes, they had packed essential supplies and slipped out the back door of the cabin. June led the way with a small light that he kept pointed at the ground to avoid detection. They moved quickly through the forest, heading toward the dark shapes of mountains visible against the night sky. "How far can they track you?" June asked as they crossed a small stream. "In open terrain, several kilometers," Nari replied. "Forests and water create interference." They had been walking for nearly an hour when Nari heard it, the high-pitched whine of Vespian hand weapons powering up. She grabbed June's arm and pulled him down just as a blast of energy cut through the trees where they had been standing. "They're closer than I thought," she whispered. June's face was serious but calm. He pointed to a rocky outcropping. "Behind those rocks. I'll draw them away." "No," Nari hissed. "Their weapons will kill you instantly." "Trust me," he said. In the dim light, his eyes were steady. "I know this forest. They don't." Before she could protest further, he had slipped away, moving silently, through the underbrush. Nari made her way to the rocks, crouching low. Moments later, she heard June making noise some distance away. Breaking branches, rustling leaves. The hunters took the bait. 3 Vespians moved past her hiding place, following the sounds. In the moonlight, she could see their tall, thin forms, and the distinctive helmets that helped them breathe in non-Vespian atmospheres. Each carried an energy weapon. Nari held her breath until they passed. She wanted to run in the opposite direction, but she couldn't leave June to face them alone. She waited, listening intently. The forest fell silent. Then came the sound of energy blasts, followed by a very human cry of pain. Nari felt her heart squeeze painfully in her chest. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound. She found June taking cover behind a fallen tree, clutching his arm where a blast had grazed him. The Vespian hunters were approaching cautiously from 3 sides. Nari looked around desperately for a weapon, finding only a heavy branch. It wouldn't be enough against energy weapons, but before she could act, June did something unexpected. He pulled a small device from his pocket and threw it toward the hunters. A blinding flash lit up the forest, followed by a deafening bang. "Flash grenade," June explained, suddenly at her side and pulling her away. "Military souvenir. Won't hurt them, but will confuse their sensors for a few minutes." They ran through the forest, June grimacing with pain but never slowing. After 20 minutes of hard running, they reached the base of the mountains. A narrow path led upward. "The caves are higher up," June said, his breathing labored. 1 kilometer more. Dawn was breaking by the time they reached the cave entrance. June collapsed just inside, his face pale. Nari examined his wound. The energy blast had burned through his jacket and seared the flesh beneath. "I have nothing to treat this," she said, feeling helpless. June managed a smile despite the pain. "Backpack, medical kit." Nari found bandages, antiseptic, and pain medication. She cleaned and dressed his wound as best she could, following his instructions. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked as she worked. "You could have escaped while they followed me." June looked surprised by the question. "I would never leave you to face them alone. But why risk your life for someone not even of your species? Someone you barely know?" June was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out with his good hand and touched her face gently. "Because in the weeks you've been here, I've come to care about you, not as an alien, not as a curiosity, as Nari." Something warm spread through Nari's chest, an emotion her telepathic species rarely expressed physically, but that humans embraced openly. As the sun rose outside their hiding place, casting soft light into the cave, Nari realized that even with hunters pursuing them, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. She felt safe. Morning light filtered into the cave, where Nari and June had spent 3 days hiding from the Vespian hunters. They had ventured out only at night, gathering food and checking if the area was clear. June's wound was healing, but slower than Nari would have liked. "We can't stay here forever," June said, sitting at the cave entrance and looking down at the forest below. "Sooner or later they'll find us." Nari nodded. She had been working on a plan. From the parts June had saved from her pod and a communication device she had taken from one of their pursuers during a brief encounter, she had assembled a crude transmitter. "If I can boost the signal," she explained, "I might reach a passing Nevaran or allied ship. But to do that, I need to get to higher ground." June pointed to a peak visible in the distance. "That's the highest point in the area. About half a day's climb from here." They set out that evening, moving carefully through the forest and up the rocky slopes. June moved with surprising agility despite his injury, finding paths that would have been invisible to Nari. Near midnight, they reached the summit. Cold wind whipped around them as Nari set up the transmitter. June kept watch, his human eyes, scanning the darkness below. "How long will it take?" he asked. "Hours, maybe days," Nari replied. "And that's if any friendly ships are even passing through this system." June sat beside her, wrapping a blanket around both of them to share warmth. "And if they come, what then?" Nari looked at him. His question contained another one that remained unspoken. "I need to clear my name," she said softly. "Taiho's betrayal threatens my entire people. I must warn them." June nodded, his eyes understanding but sad. They sat in silence as the transmitter sent its signal into space, As dawn approached, June suddenly stiffened. Movement, he whispered. 3 figures climbing from the east. Nari felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. The hunters. They must have detected the transmission. June checked the small weapon he had taken from one of the hunters during their earlier encounter. It doesn't have much. Charge left. Nari looked up at the lightening sky. No sign of rescue. We need to hold them off as long as possible. The Vespians approached cautiously, using the rocky terrain for cover. June fired the weapon once, forcing them back temporarily. Save the charge, Nari warned. The standoff continued as the sun rose fully. The hunters were patient, knowing their prey had nowhere to go. Occasionally one would move forward, testing their defenses, then retreat when June revealed their position. Midday came and went. The transmitter continued its silent call for help. June shared the last of their water, his face grim but determined. They're preparing to rush us, he said suddenly, noticing a change in the hunters' positions, all 3 at once from different directions. Nari knew they couldn't stop such an attack. She looked at June, memorizing his face. Thank you, she said, for everything. June smiled, a gesture so human and so beautiful it made her heart ache. No regrets, he replied. The hunters made their move, emerging from cover simultaneously. June fired the last charge from the weapon, dropping one of them. The other 2 kept coming, and then the sky erupted with light. A ship appeared above them, far larger than the hunter's vessel. Its blue hull gleamed in the sunlight as it descended rapidly. The remaining Vespians turned to flee but were caught, in a beam of light that froze them in place. Naviran, Nari breathed. It's a Naviran diplomatic vessel. The ship hovered, then settled on a flat area nearby. The hatch opened, and several Navirans emerged, weapons ready. Among them was a familiar face, Captain Mina, an old friend from Nari's diplomatic service days. Nari, Mina called, rushing forward. By the stars, you're alive. The 2 embraced briefly before Mina stepped back, looking at June with curiosity. This is June, Nari explained. He saved my life multiple times. Mina bowed slightly to June, a gesture of respect rarely shown to unknown species. Then we owe you a great debt, June of Earth. On board the ship, as medics treated June's wound, Mina explained everything. The evidence you gathered before your exile reached sympathetic ears in the council. When Taeho's plan failed, when you escaped the outpost attack, he grew desperate, made mistakes. He's been arrested? Mina nodded. Along with several Vespian diplomats involved in the plot. Your name has been cleared. The council wants you to return immediately. Nari felt relief wash over her. Justice would be served. Her people were safe. We have protocols for first contact with developing worlds, Mina continued. Earth will be placed under protection until they're ready to join the galactic community. Nari looked through the viewport at the blue-green planet below them. Somewhere down there was a small cabin in the forest that had briefly been her home. She found June, in the medical bay, sitting up as the Naviran doctor examined him with fascination. Your people want you back, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Nari replied. But there's something they want even more. Knowledge of other worlds, peaceful contact, cultural exchange. She took a deep breath. They need an ambassador to Earth. Someone who understands both worlds. June's eyes widened slightly. You would stay? Not just stay, Nari said, taking his hand. His 5 fingers intertwined with her 4 in a perfect fit. Build something new. If you'll help me. June's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. I thought you'd never ask. On the bridge, Captain Mina was surprised by Nari's decision, but ultimately supported it. As the ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, arrangements were made. Nari would be Earth's first official extraterrestrial resident, the beginning of a carefully managed cultural exchange. Under the stars that night, standing outside June's cabin where it all began, Nari pointed to the sky. Out there are thousands of worlds, billions of beings. But somehow, across all that distance, we found each other. June's arm circled her waist. Maybe that's the greatest discovery of all.